The Terran embassy ship Harmony drifted silently through the void, its hull gleaming white against the star-studded darkness. Ambassador Sarah stood before the massive viewport in her quarters, watching the approaching station that would either mark humanity's greatest diplomatic triumph or its most catastrophic failure. The Galactic Council's central station stretched across several kilometers, a testament to the combined engineering prowess of 17 different alien civilizations. Today, humanity would attempt to join that prestigious alliance. "Ambassador," came the voice of Captain through the comm system. "We're receiving final approach vectors from Council Traffic Control, estimated docking in 47 minutes. Sarah touched the communication panel. "Thank you, Captain. Are our security escorts in position?" "Yes, ma'am. Defiance and Vigilance are maintaining standard diplomatic distance. Both captains confirm they're ready to provide protection if needed, though I doubt we'll have any trouble here." Sarah nodded, though the captain couldn't see her. The two escort frigates represented Earth's most advanced military technology, but they were gnats compared to the massive warships she could see patrolling near the Council station. The dreadnoughts alone were 3 times the size of Earth's largest battleships. Humanity had come a long way in the 200 years since achieving faster-than-light travel, but they remained newcomers to galactic politics. The door to her quarters chimed softly. "Enter," Sarah called. Doctor, the mission's chief, stepped inside. Her usually calm demeanor showed signs of strain. "Sarah, we need to talk about the final preparations. I've been reviewing the cultural protocols one more time, and I'm concerned about the hegemony delegation." The hegemony. Sarah had spent months studying every available piece of intelligence about the faction that controlled nearly a third of the galaxy. 3 species working in perfect unity: the militaristic, the scheming, and the psychically gifted. Together, they formed the most powerful bloc in the Galactic Council. "What specifically concerns you?" Sarah asked, gesturing for to take a seat. "Their recent expansion patterns. In the past 50 years, they've absorbed 14 independent worlds, not through conquest, but through what they call voluntary integration. The populations of those worlds voted to join the hegemony after experiencing various economic and social pressures." "That's not illegal under galactic law," Sarah pointed out. "No, but it shows a pattern. The hegemony doesn't like independent systems near their borders. Earth sits right along their expansion corridor toward the Outer Rim territories. If we don't join the Council under their protection, we become a potential obstacle to their long-term goals." Sarah had suspected as much. Earth's application to join the Galactic Council had been fast-tracked with unusual speed, largely due to hegemony influence. The official reason was humanity's impressive technological adaptation and rapid territorial expansion. The real reason was likely more complex. "Do you think they'll try to pressure us during the negotiations?" Sarah asked. "I think they'll try to position themselves as our natural patrons in the Council. The question is what happens if we refuse." Before Sarah could respond, the ship's general alert tone sounded. Captain's voice followed immediately. "All hands prepare for docking procedures. Ambassador, please report to the main airlock in 30 minutes for the formal reception." Sarah stood and smoothed her formal diplomatic robes. The deep blue fabric was designed to project both authority and peaceful intentions, based on extensive psychological analysis of known galactic species. "I want you monitoring the biological readings of all the delegates during the negotiations. If anyone's stress levels spike, I need to know immediately." "Understood, Sarah. Be careful in there. Something about this whole situation feels orchestrated." The main airlock of the Harmony opened with a soft hiss, revealing the grand reception hall of the Council station. The architecture was breathtaking, combining elements from dozens of different civilizations into a harmonious whole. Crystalline spires reached toward a domed ceiling that displayed real-time images of the surrounding star field. Delegates from various species moved through the space with practiced diplomatic grace. Sarah stepped forward, flanked by her security detail and diplomatic staff. Almost immediately, a figure approached from across the hall. The being was clearly standing nearly 3 meters tall with gray-scaled skin and predatory features softened by expensive robes. The universal translator in Sarah's ear provided smooth interpretation as he spoke. "Ambassador, welcome to Council Station. I am War Commander of the Hegemony Delegation. On behalf of the Tripartite Alliance, I extend formal greetings to humanity." Sarah bowed slightly in the manner her briefings had indicated was appropriate. War Commander, the honor is ours. Humanity is grateful for the Council's consideration of our application. Your species has shown remarkable adaptability since achieving interstellar flight, said, his tone carrying undertones the translator couldn't quite capture. The hegemony has watched your expansion with great interest. Perhaps we might speak privately before the formal sessions begin. I would be honored, Sarah replied, though warning signals flashed in her mind. Private meetings before formal negotiations often meant pressure tactics or ultimatums delivered away from official records. Led her to a smaller chamber off the main hall. The room was clearly designed for private diplomatic discussions, with comfortable seating and privacy screens that would prevent electronic eavesdropping. A second figure waited inside, whose shifting, tentacled form was adorned with the insignia of high political rank. Ambassador, this is diplomatic sovereign Aura, said. She speaks for the in-council matters. This communication came through rapid color shifts across her skin, translated into words by the universal system. Human ambassador, your species represents fascinating potential. However, potential requires guidance to achieve fruition. Sarah settled into the offered chair, maintaining diplomatic composure despite her growing unease. We appreciate the hegemony's interest in Earth's development. However, humanity values its independence and looks forward to contributing to the Council as an autonomous member. And Ara exchanged what Sarah's training told her was a meaningful look between species that had worked together for centuries. The War Commander leaned forward slightly. Ambassador, independence is a luxury that requires strength to maintain. Your species controls 12 star systems with a total population of 8 billion. The hegemony spans 400 systems with over 2 trillion citizens. In galactic terms, humanity remains vulnerable. Are you suggesting Earth faces some threat? Sarah asked carefully. The galaxy is full of threats. Aura's colors pulsed in patterns the translator rendered as subtle menace. Pirates, rogue states, economic warfare, resource competition. New council members typically require patronage from established powers during their first century of membership. Sarah recognized the offer for what it was, and the implicit threat behind it. Humanity appreciates the hegemony's concern for our welfare. However, we believe our rapid technological advancement and military capabilities provide adequate security for our systems. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Scaled features hardened into an expression that transcended species barriers, predatory displeasure. Your military capabilities, he said slowly, have not been tested against truly modern galactic forces. The ships escorting you here are impressive for a species of your age, but they would not survive a single engagement with hegemony patrol vessels, much less our battle fleets. War Commander, Sarah said, her voice carrying diplomatic steel, is the hegemony threatening Earth's sovereignty before we've even been admitted to the Council? Not threatening, Aura interjected, her colors shifting to patterns that suggested reasonableness. Explaining reality, young species that refuse proper guidance often experience unfortunate incidents. Systems fail, trade routes become dangerous, colonial worlds face unexpected challenges. Much better to accept protection from the beginning. Sarah stood slowly, recognizing that the conversation had moved beyond diplomacy into the realm of coercion. I think this discussion should continue during the formal negotiations, where all council members can participate. Also rose, his full height making him loom over the human diplomat. As you wish, Ambassador, but remember, the galaxy has little patience for stubborn idealism. Pragmatism serves species better in the long run. The formal council chamber was a masterpiece of engineering and diplomacy. Representatives from 47 different species occupied positions arranged in careful geometric patterns that reflected the complex web of galactic politics. At the center sat the council's rotating presidency, currently held by the ancient and respected. Council President called the session to order with a harmonious tone that the universal translators rendered as both musical and authoritative. Honored delegates, we gather to consider the application of the species known as humans for full membership in the Galactic Council. Ambassador, please present your species case for admission. Sarah rose and moved to the central speaking platform. She had rehearsed this presentation hundreds of times, but the weight of speaking for all humanity before the galaxy's most powerful beings was overwhelming. Honored Council President, esteemed delegates, I stand before you representing 8 billion humans across 12 star systems. In the 2 centuries since achieving faster-than-light travel, my species has demonstrated rapid adaptation to galactic civilization while maintaining our core values of independence, innovation, and peaceful cooperation. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's expansion and development. Humanity offers unique perspectives on technology, governance, and cooperation. Our research has produced breakthrough advances in quantum computing, biological adaptation, and stellar engineering. We seek membership not just to benefit from galactic civilization, but to contribute to it. Murmurs of approval rippled through portions of the chamber. Sarah felt a moment of hope until she noticed the hegemony delegation's cold silence. Our military forces, Sarah continued, while smaller than those of established powers, have proven capable of defending our territory against all challenges. We offer the Council a steadfast ally committed to peaceful resolution of conflicts while maintaining the strength to deter aggression. War Commander requested permission to speak. Council President, the hegemony acknowledges humanity's achievements. However, we must question whether a species so young and territorially limited can contribute meaningfully to Council deliberations. Their military claims particularly concern us. Sarah felt the trap closing. War Commander, is the hegemony suggesting humanity lacks the capability to defend its sovereignty? We question whether any species with so little experience in galactic warfare can make accurate assessments of their defensive capabilities, replied. Perhaps a demonstration would prove educational. The chamber fell silent. Sarah realized with crystal clarity that this moment would define not just her mission, but possibly humanity's entire future relationship with galactic civilization. The hegemony was maneuvering her species into a position where they would have to prove their military worth or accept subordinate status. If the War Commander believes a demonstration would be beneficial to the Council's deliberations, Sarah said carefully, humanity would be willing to participate. However, we would require that such demonstration follow established Council protocols for military exercises between sovereign peoples. Aura's colors shifted to patterns of predatory satisfaction. The hegemony proposes a simple test, one of your escort vessels against one of ours in simulated combat. Non-lethal weapons, of course. The exercise would demonstrate your species' technological capabilities to the full Council. Sarah knew she was walking into a trap, but refusing would be interpreted as weakness by every delegate in the chamber. Humanity accepts the hegemony's proposal, provided the exercise follows all Council safety regulations and is observed by neutral referees. Excellent, said. We shall use the testing range in Sector 7. Our patrol vessel Retribution will represent hegemony capabilities. As the session recessed to prepare for the demonstration, Sarah contacted Captain through her secure communicator. We have a situation. The hegemony has maneuvered us into a military demonstration, one of our escorts against one of theirs. Understood, Ambassador. Which ship do you want to represent us? Sarah thought quickly. The Defiance was slightly larger, but Captain Sarah Torres of the Vigilance had more combat experience. The Vigilance. Captain Torres has faced real combat situations in the border regions. She'll know how to make the best showing possible. I'll relay the orders immediately. Ambassador, be careful. Something about this whole situation feels like a setup. An hour later, the two ships faced each other in the testing range, a cleared section of space surrounded by observation platforms filled with Council delegates. The Vigilance, at 800 meters long, looked like a child's toy compared to the massive hegemony vessel. The Retribution stretched over 2 kilometers and bristled with weapons systems that seemed excessive for a patrol ship. Captain Tor's voice came through the diplomatic channel. Ambassador, we're ready to begin. I should warn you, our sensors are showing power readings from that hegemony ship that exceed anything in our databases. This isn't going to be a fair fight. Do your best, Captain. Show them what human determination looks like. The demonstration began with the two ships at maximum range. Captain Torres immediately demonstrated why she was considered one of Earth's finest officers, using the Vigilance's superior maneuverability to avoid the hegemony ship's initial strikes while closing the distance. Her tactical systems identified weaknesses in the alien vessel's design and exploited them with precision strikes. For several minutes, it appeared that human tactical innovation might overcome the technological disadvantage. The Vigilance danced around the slower hegemony ship, landing hits on critical systems while avoiding the worst of the return fire. Then War Commander, apparently, decided the demonstration had continued long enough. The Retribution unleashed a barrage that overwhelmed every defensive system on the Vigilance in seconds. The human ship's shields collapsed, its weapons went offline, and its engines died. According to the exercise rules, Captain Torres and her crew were now officially destroyed. "A valiant effort," his voice carried across the diplomatic channel, dripping with condescension. "Human tactics show creativity, but creativity cannot overcome technological superiority. Perhaps now the Council understands why younger species require proper guidance." Sarah watched the powered-down hulk of the Vigilance and felt something cold settle in her chest. The demonstration had been exactly what the hegemony wanted, a clear display of human vulnerability designed to justify their protection offer. Council President called for the session to reconvene. "The demonstration has been illuminating. We will now hear final arguments regarding humanity's application for Council membership." Sarah returned to the speaking platform, but before she could begin, rose to address the assembly. "Honored delegates, the hegemony moves that humanity's application be approved with conditions. We propose that Earth and its colonies be granted associate membership under hegemony protection and guidance. This arrangement would provide humanity with the security they clearly require while allowing them to contribute to galactic civilization." The motion sent shock waves through Sarah's nervous system. Associate membership meant humanity would have a voice in council debates, but no vote. Hegemony protection would mean hegemony control. Earth would become another client state in their expanding empire. "Council President," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the chamber, "humanity respectfully declines the hegemony's generous offer. We seek full membership as a sovereign species or no membership at all." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Aura spoke, her colors shifting to patterns that needed no translation, naked threat. "Ambassador, your species may wish to reconsider. Independence can be dangerous for those who lack the strength to maintain it. The galaxy has little tolerance for stubborn idealism." Sarah felt the weight of 8 billion human lives pressing down on her. Every instinct screamed that she was leading her species into catastrophe. But she also remembered the words of the old Earth philosopher who had said that those who would trade freedom for safety deserved neither. "The human answer remains the same," she said clearly, "full membership or none." War Commander's expression shifted into something that transcended species, pure predatory rage barely held in check by diplomatic protocol. "Very well, Ambassador. The hegemony withdraws its support for humanity's application. We advise the Council that premature admission of unprotected species has historically led to tragic consequences." The Council President called for a formal vote. The result was exactly what Sarah had feared. Humanity's application was rejected by a significant margin, with most delegates following the hegemony's lead. Earth would remain outside galactic civilization, isolated and vulnerable. As the session ended, approached Sarah one final time. "Ambassador, this outcome saddens the hegemony greatly. However, our offer of protection remains open. When your species experiences the realities of galactic existence without proper guidance, we will be waiting to welcome you into our alliance." Sarah maintained diplomatic composure until she reached her quarters on the Harmony. Only then did she allow herself to slump into a chair and contemplate the magnitude of what had just occurred. Humanity had chosen independence over security, and she feared they would all pay the price for her decision. But as she prepared her report for Earth's government, Sarah also felt a spark of something else, determination. The hegemony expected humanity to come crawling back within months, begging for protection. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Humans had a saying, "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants." The hegemony had just made it clear which category they belonged in. Now humanity would have to decide whether they were willing to pay freedom's price. The journey back to Earth passed in ominous quiet, with the escort frigates maintaining constant vigilance against possible accidents. But as the blue marble of humanities appeared in the viewports, Sarah felt her resolve harden. The hegemony thought they could bully Earth into submission. They were about to learn that humans had not conquered 12-star systems by backing down from bullies. 3 months after ambassadors returned to Earth, the first signs of hegemony pressure began appearing throughout human space. Merchant vessels reported unusual delays at trading posts near hegemony territory. Mining operations on the outer colonies experienced equipment failures that seemed suspiciously coordinated. Most troubling of all, several independent freighter captains who regularly traded with human worlds simply disappeared along routes that passed through neutral space. President Maria Santos stood in the Situation Room beneath the Global Defense Headquarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing the current status of all 12 human star systems. The picture painted by the data was increasingly grim. "Admiral," she said, addressing the woman who shared a surname with their former ambassador, though no family relation existed. "What's our current military readiness status?" Admiral Lisa, commander of the Terran Defense Force, gestured toward a tactical display. "We have 47 combat vessels spread across our territory, with another 18 in various stages of construction. Against the hegemony's confirmed 1,000-plus warships, we're looking at odds of roughly 20-1. Defense Minister James leaned forward in his chair. "Those numbers assume the hegemony commits their entire fleet against us. Intelligence suggests they're dealing with border tensions in at least 3 other sectors. Even if they only commit half their forces, we're still facing 10-1 odds," Admiral replied grimly. "Our technological demonstration at Council Station showed that individual ship capabilities heavily favor them as well." President Santos had spent sleepless nights reviewing the same data. Earth's rapid expansion through 12-star systems had been possible because they'd encountered no serious opposition. Pirates, automated defense systems left by extinct civilizations, and the occasional territorial dispute with other young species, these had been manageable challenges. The hegemony represented something entirely different. "Director Park," the president said, turning to the head of strategic intelligence, "what do we know about their intentions?" Director Park activated a new set of displays showing shipping routes and economic data. "The pattern suggests a classic squeeze operation. They're systematically cutting us off from neutral trading partners through a combination of economic pressure and implied threats. The goal appears to be forcing us into financial crisis that will make their protection offer seem attractive." "How long before the economic pressure becomes critical?" President Santos asked. 6 months, maybe 8, Treasury Secretary Robert answered. "Our outer colonies are already struggling. 442B has lost 60% of their export revenue. New Canberra's rare earth mining operations are sitting on stockpiles they can't sell." The president stood and walked to the main tactical display, studying the positions of human settlements scattered across their small corner of the galaxy. 12-star systems represented humanity's greatest achievement, and potentially their tomb. "Admiral," she said without turning around, "I want your honest assessment. If the hegemony launches a direct military assault on human space, what are our chances?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "In a conventional engagement? 0. Their ships outgun ours individually, and they have overwhelming numerical superiority. Our only advantages are tactical flexibility and the fact that they'd be operating far from their main supply bases." "What about unconventional engagement?" "Ma'am." President Santos turned back to face the assembled leaders of human space. "Admiral, what do we know about hegemony military doctrine?" "They favor overwhelming force applied directly to enemy concentrations. Their typical strategy involves assembling massive fleets for decisive battles that end conflicts quickly. They have limited experience with prolonged, irregular warfare." "And their home territories?" Director Park answered before the Admiral could respond. "Heavily fortified but dependent on complex supply chains spanning hundreds of systems. They've never faced an enemy capable of striking at their core infrastructure." President Santos felt the germ of an idea beginning to form. "Director, how much do we know about hegemony species biology and psychology?" "Extensive data from diplomatic contacts and intelligence gathering. They are aggressive but ritualistic. They prefer formal declarations and direct confrontation. They are manipulative but risk-averse. They avoid situations where they can't predict outcomes. They are psychically gifted but emotionally volatile. they have difficulty handling unexpected psychological stress. In other words, the president said slowly, they're powerful but inflexible. They've built an empire on predictable dominance, not adaptation to asymmetric threats. Admiral's eyes sharpened as she began to understand where the president's thoughts were heading. Ma'am, are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that if the hegemony wants a war, we give them exactly what they don't expect. Not a conventional fleet engagement where they can use their advantages, but something they've never encountered before. Defense Minister looked skeptical. Madam President, even asymmetric warfare requires resources. We're talking about an enemy that controls a third of the galaxy. James, what's our one advantage that the intelligence reports consistently mention? Innovation, but not just innovation, speed of innovation. Humans adapt faster than any known galactic species. While they're preparing for the war they understand, we prepare for the war they can't imagine. President Santos returned to her chair and activated the secure communication system. Doctor, please report to the Situation Room immediately. Dr. Ravi, Earth's leading expert on xenobiology and alien psychology, arrived within minutes. He was a small man whose unassuming appearance concealed one of the most brilliant minds in human space. Doctor, the president began, I need you to think outside every box. If you wanted to inflict maximum psychological and strategic damage on the hegemony while avoiding direct military confrontation, how would you do it? The scientist considered the question for several moments. Madam President, the hegemony's greatest strength is also their greatest weakness, unity through dominance. Each species submits to the alliance because it provides security and prosperity, if that security and prosperity began to appear unreliable. Go on. The three ruling species maintain control through different mechanisms. They provide military strength, they handle diplomacy and intelligence, and they offer psychic coordination and communication. If you could disrupt any one of those pillars. Admiral leaned forward. What would that disruption look like in practical terms? For anything that makes them appear militarily vulnerable. For situations they can't manipulate or predict. For the psychological warfare that overwhelms their empathic abilities. President Santos felt pieces clicking into place. Admiral, how long would it take to retrofit our ships for maximum stealth and speed rather than direct combat capability? Approximately 3 months for the first wave of conversions. We'd be sacrificing firepower for mobility and sensor evasion. Do it, Director Park. I want intelligence operations targeting hegemony infrastructure, supply chains, and command structures. Nothing that directly threatens civilian populations, but everything that supports their military and economic dominance. Ma'am, Director Park said carefully, that's essentially a declaration of covert war against the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. Director, they've already declared war on us. They're just being polite about it. The president stood again, her decision crystallizing. Doctor, I want you to assemble a team of our best. Your mission is to design psychological operations specifically targeted at hegemony species psychology. Ma'am, Defense Minister interjected, this is an enormous risk. If we fail, the hegemony will have justification for direct military action against Earth. President Santos looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leadership. James, they're going to take direct military action regardless. The question is whether they do it on their timeline or ours. 6 weeks later, the first phase of Operation Prometheus began. The rechristened stealth frigate Shadow materialized at the edge of the system, a critical hegemony supply hub located 200 light-years from human space. Captain, formerly from Ambassador's mission, had volunteered for immediate command training when President Santos announced the need for officers who understood alien psychology. All stations report ready, her executive officer announced. Commander David Park, younger brother of Intelligence Director Park, had also volunteered for the stealth program. Sensors, what do we have? Captain asked. 3 heavy cruisers, approximately 24 cargo vessels, and what looks like a mobile construction platform. Standard patrol pattern around the main shipping lanes. Studied the tactical display. The system was a major intersection in hegemony logistics, where raw materials from subject worlds were processed before shipment to core military installations. Disrupting operations here would ripple through dozens of other systems. Weapons are the special packages ready for deployment. I, Captain. 12 stealth mines configured for maximum psychological impact rather than maximum damage. Had spent hours working with Doctor's team to understand exactly how to hurt the hegemony most effectively. The mines would disable rather than destroy, creating the appearance of an enemy that could strike anywhere, but was restrained enough not to cause massive casualties. For species that respected strength but feared unpredictability, it was a perfect terror weapon. Deploy the first package near the construction platform. Make sure the stealth coating will degrade after exactly 6 hours. The shadow drifted closer to its target, using gravitational disturbances from the system's asteroid belt to mask its approach. Felt the weight of history pressing down on her. Humanity was about to announce itself as a galactic power in the most dramatic way possible. Package deployed, the weapons officer reported. Stealth mine is active and invisible to their sensors. Excellent, take us to the next target. Over the following 4 hours, the Shadow placed 11 more mines throughout the system. Each was positioned to disable rather than destroy, sending a message that Earth possessed both the capability and restraint of a mature military power. Captain, the communications officer announced, we're receiving a priority transmission from Hegemony System Command. They're ordering all vessels to maintain current positions and stand by for security sweep. Smiled grimly. They know something is wrong but can't identify the threat. Perfect. All stations prepare for departure. We'll let the mines announce themselves. As the Shadow prepared to enter hyperspace, activated the ship's communication array and broadcast a message on standard diplomatic frequencies. This is Captain of the Terran Defense Force. The devices you're about to discover are a demonstration of humanity's commitment to defending our sovereignty. They are designed to disable, not destroy. Earth extends an offer of peaceful coexistence to the hegemony. Choose wisely. The first mine activated as the Shadow entered hyperspace. The construction platform's main reactor went offline, leaving several thousand workers stranded in zero gravity. The second mine disabled the sensor array of a heavy cruiser, blinding it to potential threats. One by one, the remaining mines activated across the system, creating chaos without causing significant casualties. Knew that similar operations were beginning across a dozen other hegemony systems. Earth had chosen to announce its defiance not with a single dramatic gesture, but with a coordinated campaign that demonstrated capabilities the enemy hadn't suspected. Back on Earth, President Santos watched the intelligence reports flowing in from across hegemony space. Operation Prometheus was exceeding all expectations. Stealth ships were striking supply convoys, disabling communications relays, and leaving behind messages that combined respect for life with unmistakable demonstrations of power. Ma'am, Director Park announced, we're getting reaction reports from hegemony core worlds. Their leadership appears to be in emergency session. Admiral pulled up tactical projections. Intelligence suggests they're mobilizing significant fleet elements, but they don't know where to send them. We've hit targets across a 300 light-year front. Casualties? The President asked. Minimal. 18 hegemony personnel hospitalized with minor injuries, no fatalities. We're being very careful to demonstrate capability without unnecessary killing. President Santos nodded approvingly. Doctor, how are our psychological operations proceeding? The consulted his reports. They are responding exactly as predicted, demanding massive military response against an enemy they can't locate. They are panicking because their intelligence networks have been completely. Most interesting of all, they are reporting severe empathic distress from sensing fear and confusion across their empire. In other words, we're accomplishing exactly what we hoped. Yes, ma'am, the hegemony's unity is showing strain for the first time in centuries. Their subject species are beginning to question whether the alliance can actually provide the security it promises. The President felt cautiously optimistic for the first time since the failed council negotiations. How are our own forces holding up? Admiral smiled. Morale is through the roof. Every ship captain is volunteering for stealth operations. The crews understand they're not just fighting for Earth, they're proving that humanity belongs on the galactic stage. And our outer colonies. 442b reports that hegemony economic pressure has completely disappeared. They're too busy dealing with internal security to worry about trade warfare. New Canberra has actually received inquiries from independent worlds interested in establishing trade relationships with a species bold enough to challenge the hegemony. President Santos allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before returning to business. Admiral, what's our next phase? Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Instead of random strikes, we start targeting specific strategic objectives. The goal is to force the hegemony into a defensive posture while demonstrating that Earth can project power across hundreds of light years. Doctor, what should we expect from hegemony leadership? Based on their psychological profiles, they'll attempt to regain control through dramatic escalation. Expect massive fleet movements and possibly direct strikes against human territory within the next 2 weeks. The president nodded. This was the moment she'd been preparing for since the failed negotiations. Admiral, are we ready for Phase 3? Yes, ma'am. If they bring the fight to human space, we'll show them what home field advantage looks like. 2 weeks later, the hegemony's response arrived in the form of a battle fleet comprising over 200 warships. War Commander led the armada personally, his flagship Dominion bristling with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, Earth's birthplace and symbolic heart of human civilization. Admiral watched their approach from the command center of Luna Station, humanity's primary military installation. Admiral, her operations officer announced, the hegemony fleet is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're demanding humanity's immediate surrender and the extradition of all personnel involved in attacks on hegemony territory. Response, Admiral asked. President Santos's voice came through the secure channel from Earth. Give them our answer, Admiral. Lisa smiled as she opened communication channels to every ship in the solar system. Hidden among the asteroids, lurking behind the moons of gas giants, and distributed throughout the outer planets, humanity's defense fleet waited in perfect silence. This is Admiral of the Terran Defense Force, she broadcast on the same frequency the hegemony was using. War Commander, you are in violation of human territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. His reply was exactly what she expected. Admiral, you command fewer than 50 vessels against our 200. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift. War Commander, Admiral replied calmly, you still don't understand what you're dealing with. Humanity learned warfare in the asteroid belts and radiation storms of our home system. You're not entering our territory, you're entering our killing ground. The Battle of Sol began when the hegemony fleet attempted to establish orbit around Earth. They expected to face a desperate defensive stand by human vessels. Instead, they found themselves caught in the most sophisticated trap in military history. The first wave of attacks came from weapons platforms hidden among the asteroid belt, batteries that had been constructed in secret over the past 6 months. Projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed tore through hegemony shields designed to stop energy weapons. The second wave emerged from the outer planets. Stealth frigates that had been waiting in the shadow of Jupiter and Saturn opened fire with concentrated missile barrages, targeting the enemy fleet's command and control systems. The third wave was the killing blow. Humanity's main battle fleet, which had been hidden behind the moon, emerged at full acceleration with Admiral's flagship Retribution leading the charge. The name was chosen specifically to remind War Commander of his dismissive demonstration at Council Station. All ships, Admiral broadcast, execute Battle Plan Alamo, show them what humans do to bullies. The battle raged for 18 hours. Despite their technological advantages, the hegemony fleet found themselves fighting in an environment humanity had turned into a fortress. Every piece of space debris had been weaponized, every celestial body concealed defensive installations, and every attack lane had been pre-planned and sighted. When the smoke cleared, over half the hegemony fleet was destroyed or disabled. War Commander's flagship limped away in retreat, its hull and its crew decimated. But Admiral knew the real victory wasn't military, it was psychological. For the first time in centuries, a hegemony fleet had been defeated. Word would spread across the galaxy that the Alliance's military dominance was not absolute. President Santos addressed the planet that night. Her words broadcast not just to human space, but across the entire galactic community. Today, humanity proved that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We did not seek this conflict. but we did not run from it. The galaxy now knows that Earth stands ready to defend not just our own sovereignty, but the right of all species to determine their own destiny. The age of hegemony dominance is ending. The age of galactic democracy has begun. The shockwaves from humanity's victory at Sol rippled across the galaxy faster than any hyperspace transmission. Within days, intelligence reports flooded into Earth from dozens of sectors. Independent worlds that had remained silent for decades were openly questioning hegemony protection agreements. 3 minor species had formally requested diplomatic contact with Earth. Most significantly, several hegemony client states were experiencing civil unrest as their populations demanded explanations for their protectors' humiliating defeat. President Santos sat in her private office aboard the orbital command station that now served as humanity's provisional capital. Through the massive viewport, she could see the construction scaffolds surrounding dozens of new warships. Earth's industrial capacity had been completely converted to military production, with every human colony contributing resources to the war effort. "Ma'am," Director Park announced as she entered the office, "we have a problem. Hegemony intelligence operations have successfully infiltrated 3 independent worlds that were considering alliance with Earth. 2 of them have withdrawn their diplomatic overtures." The president gestured for the intelligence director to take a seat. Expected reaction. What about the 3rd world? "They are still interested, but they're demanding proof that we can provide long-term protection against hegemony retaliation. Admiral's victory was impressive, but they know the enemy has barely committed 5% of their total military strength." President Santos had been expecting this moment since the Battle of Sol. Military victory was only the first step in challenging an empire that had dominated galactic politics for over 3 centuries. Now came the much harder task of building an alternative power structure that could compete with the hegemony's vast resources. "Director, what's the status of Project Icarus?" Director Park smiled for the first time in weeks. "Doctor's team has made breakthrough progress. The psychological warfare campaign is exceeding all projections. We've identified 17 separate resistance movements within hegemony space that are openly challenging local authorities." Resistance movements. Species that were voluntarily integrated into the hegemony over the past century. Apparently, they never fully accepted their client status. Our demonstration that the alliance can be defeated militarily has given them hope for the first time in decades. The president felt a surge of excitement. Are any of them requesting direct assistance? 3 so far. In the Outer Rim territories, the Confederacy near the galactic core, and most importantly, the Republic. President Santos sat up. They still exist. Not as an independent state, but as a government in exile. They've maintained secret military forces for over 60 years, waiting for an opportunity to reclaim their leadership wants to meet with Earth representatives to discuss coordinated action against hegemony forces. The president activated her secure communication panel. "Get me Admiral immediately." Admiral's image appeared within seconds. "Madam President, I was hoping you'd call. We have intelligence suggesting the hegemony is massing forces for a major counterattack. Fleet concentrations in at least 6 sectors, total strength estimated at over 800 vessels." "Admiral, I need your honest assessment. Can we handle a force that size?" "Not in direct engagement. Our victory at Sol was possible because we fought on our own terms in a prepared defensive position. In open space against 800 ships, we'd be annihilated." "What if we weren't fighting alone?" The Admiral paused. "Ma'am, are you referring to potential allies?" "I'm referring to a galaxy-wide uprising against hegemony dominance. Admiral, how quickly can we establish contact with resistance movements in hegemony space?" Admiral's expression shifted to thoughtful calculation. "Stealth ships could reach most target systems within 2 weeks. But ma'am, providing direct military support to resistance movements would essentially transform this from a border conflict into a galactic civil war." "Admiral, it was already a galactic civil war. We just hadn't admitted it yet." President Santos stood and walked to the viewport, studying the construction of humanity's expanding fleet. The hegemony has spent 3 centuries building an empire based on intimidation and forced integration. Every client species, every protection agreement, every economic arrangement has been designed to maintain their dominance. We're not starting a civil war. We're finishing one that began the first time they conquered a peaceful world. Director Park activated a holographic display showing current galactic political alignments. Madam President, our intelligence suggests that approximately 40% of hegemony territory consists of client species that joined under various forms of coercion, if even half of them could be convinced to rebel. The hegemony would face simultaneous uprisings across hundreds of star systems, Admiral finished. They wouldn't have enough forces to suppress everyone while still maintaining their core military strength. President Santos returned to her desk and activated the priority communication system. Admiral, I'm authorizing Operation Spartacus. Contact every resistance movement our intelligence has identified. Offer them weapons, training, and coordinated support in exchange for simultaneous action against hegemony forces. Ma'am, Admiral said carefully, this is an enormous commitment. We'll be providing aid to groups spread across thousands of light years, if any of them are compromised. Then we'll discover whether humanity truly has what it takes to lead a galactic revolution. The President's voice carried absolute conviction. Admiral, for 300 years, the galaxy has accepted that the strong dominate the weak. It's time to prove that idea wrong. 3 weeks later, Captain found herself in the strangest diplomatic meeting of her career. The government in exile had established their secret headquarters in an abandoned mining station at the edge of a nebula, hidden from hegemony sensors by natural radiation interference. President in exile was a striking figure even by alien standards. They resembled Earth's extinct velociraptors, but with enlarged craniums and delicate hands capable of intricate manipulation. Their species had achieved interstellar flight while humans were still discovering agriculture, only to be conquered by the hegemony during Earth's medieval period. Captain, said through the universal translator, your species has accomplished something we thought impossible. In 60 years of exile, we never imagined that anyone could defeat a hegemony battle fleet. Had spent the journey to this meeting studying history. Their resistance to hegemony occupation had been legendary, requiring nearly a decade of brutal warfare to finally suppress. President, humanity is honored by your invitation. We're here to discuss how our species can work together to restore freedom to the galaxy. Freedom, repeated, the translator conveying complex emotional undertones. We have dreamed of that word for 3 generations. Tell me, Captain, does Earth truly believe it can challenge an empire that spans a third of the galaxy? Activated a holographic display showing the results of Operation Spartacus planning. President, we believe the empire is far weaker than it appears. Our intelligence indicates that over 40 resistance movements are ready to act if they receive support. Simultaneous uprisings across hundreds of systems would force the hegemony to choose between maintaining their core territories and suppressing rebellions. And if they choose to crush the rebellions, then their core territories become vulnerable to direct assault by Earth and our allies. Paused, ensuring the translator had time to convey her meaning clearly. President, the hegemony's greatest strength has always been their ability to concentrate overwhelming force at decisive points. If they're forced to spread their fleets across hundreds of simultaneous conflicts, that advantage disappears. Studied the holographic data for several minutes. Your plan requires remarkable coordination. How do you propose to maintain communication across such vast distances while avoiding hegemony intelligence networks? Smiled, we've developed quantum entanglement communication systems that are theoretically impossible to intercept. Each resistance cell will receive a secure communication device that allows instantaneous contact regardless of distance. Impressive technology for such a young species. Tone carried new respect. What military support can Earth provide? Weapons adapted to your species' physiology, training in asymmetric warfare tactics, and stealth ships for critical operations. We can't provide massive fleets, but we can ensure every resistance movement has the tools they need to be effective. Stood and walked to a viewport showing the nebula's swirling gases. Captain, the people have suffered under hegemony occupation for 60 years. Our children are born into slavery, taught to accept their subjugation as natural law. If your revolution fails, our species will face complete extermination. President said quietly, if our revolution fails, every free species in the galaxy will face the same fate. The hegemony has made it clear that they won't tolerate any challenge to their dominance. Humanity chose resistance because surrender would mean the death of everything we value. And if we succeed, then we build a galaxy where species determine their own destinies, where technological advancement serves the common good rather than imperial dominance, where strength protects the weak rather than oppressing them. Turn back to face the human captain. You speak of ideals that the galaxy abandoned long ago. Most species have accepted that survival requires submission to those with greater power. Most species, replied, have never encountered humans. The meeting continued for 3 days, with military leaders providing detailed intelligence about hegemony defensive positions, while Earth representatives outlined coordination protocols for the planned uprising. By the end, both sides had committed to a level of cooperation that went far beyond mere alliance. They were planning to jointly rebuild galactic civilization. Similar meetings were occurring throughout human space as stealth ships made contact with resistance movements across dozens of sectors. The provided detailed maps of hegemony supply routes in the outer rim. The Confederacy offered their expertise in cybernetic warfare. 17 other species contributed intelligence, resources, or strategic positions to the growing coalition. But the most significant development occurred in an unexpected location. Admiral received the encrypted message while reviewing battle plans for Operation Spartacus. Admiral, her communications officer announced, priority transmission from the Galactic Council. It's marked with diplomatic immunity codes. Admiral felt her pulse quicken. Source. The message originated from Council Station itself. Ma'am, it appears to be from a faction within the Council that's been monitoring our activities. The message, when decoded, was brief and shocking. Admiral, representatives of 18 Council species request immediate clandestine meeting to discuss mutual interests regarding hegemony expansion. We believe the time has come for regime change in galactic politics. Council Delegate Ra of the Coalition will rendezvous with Earth representatives at coordinates attached. Ensure absolute secrecy. The galaxy's future may depend on this meeting. Admiral stared at the message for several moments before contacting President Santos. Ma'am, we have a situation. It appears that humanity's resistance to the hegemony has attracted attention from within the Galactic Council itself. President Santos was quiet for a long moment. Admiral, what are your thoughts? Ma'am, if we have potential allies within the Council, it changes everything. They could provide legitimacy to our revolution, access to resources we can't imagine, and most importantly, proof that hegemony dominance isn't supported by the majority of galactic civilization. It could also be a trap designed to identify all resistance movements at once. Yes, ma'am, but if it's legitimate, Admiral paused, considering the implications. Ma'am, if it's legitimate, we're not leading a revolution anymore. We're leading a restoration of democratic governance to the galaxy. President Santos was quiet for nearly a minute. Finally, she spoke. Admiral, take the meeting, but bring enough firepower to fight your way out if this turns into an ambush. 3 days later, Admiral found herself in another clandestine meeting, this time aboard her flagship Retribution at coordinates deep in neutral space. The ship that approached was unlike anything in human databases, clearly of Council design, but incorporating technologies from multiple species. Council Delegate Ra materialized in the meeting room through what appeared to be teleportation technology. The being was clearly one of the galaxy's oldest and most respected species, but her manner suggested extreme urgency. Admiral, Ra said, her melodic voice conveying complex harmonics the universal translator rendered as stress and determination. Thank you for accepting this meeting. What I'm about to tell you will reshape your understanding of galactic politics. Admiral gestured for the alien diplomat to continue. The hegemony controls the Galactic Council through a combination of economic pressure, military intimidation, and political manipulation. 18 Council species have been secretly documenting their violations of galactic law for over a century, waiting for an opportunity to challenge their dominance. And humanity's resistance has provided that opportunity. Your species has accomplished something we thought impossible. You've proven that hegemony forces can be defeated through tactical innovation rather than overwhelming strength. More importantly, you've inspired resistance movements that we've been quietly supporting for decades. Admiral felt the pieces of a much larger puzzle clicking into place. Council Delegate, how long have you known about the resistance movements in hegemony space? We helped create most of them. The government in exile has received covert council support for 60 years. The resistance was organized with our assistance. Even some of the technology your species has encountered was provided through carefully obscured channels. Then why haven't you acted before now? Because we needed a species strong enough to serve as the public face of resistance. The hegemony had successfully convinced most of the galaxy that their dominance was inevitable. Your victory at Sol shattered that illusion. Admiral stood and activated the tactical displays showing current fleet positions. Council Delegate, what exactly are you proposing? Ra moved to the display and began highlighting star systems with a graceful gesture. Coordinated action by Earth's coalition, the resistance movements, and loyalist council forces. The goal isn't just to defeat the hegemony militarily, it's to expose their violations of galactic law and restore legitimate governance to the council. You're talking about a complete political revolution. Admiral, we're talking about the most significant transformation in galactic history. The hegemony has maintained power by convincing everyone that strength equals legitimacy. Your species has proven that strength serving justice is far more powerful than strength serving dominance. Admiral studied the star charts, seeing the galaxy in an entirely new light. What do you need from Earth? Continue doing exactly what you're already doing. Coordinate with the resistance movements, provide them with military support, and prepare for simultaneous action across hundreds of systems. When the uprising begins, Council loyalist forces will emerge from hiding to support legitimate governments throughout former hegemony territory. And if we lose? Ra's harmonic patterns shifted to frequencies the translator rendered as grim determination. Admiral, failure isn't an option. The hegemony has already begun planning the final solution to what they call the independence problem. If this revolution fails, they intend to make examples of Earth and every species that has dared to resist them. Admiral felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of examples? Complete extermination, planetary bombardment until nothing remains but radioactive debris. They plan to turn human space into a monument to the price of defying their authority. The weight of that revelation settled over the meeting room like a physical presence. Admiral realized that humanity had passed the point of no return. They would either succeed in overthrowing galactic tyranny, or they would die as martyrs to the cause of freedom. Council Delegate, she said finally, when do we begin? Admiral, we already have. Your species fired the first shot in this war the moment Ambassador refused to accept client status. Now we finish what you started. The assassination came without warning, delivered by beings humanity had trusted completely. Ambassador Sarah stood in the diplomatic quarters of the neutral station, where Earth had agreed to meet with hegemony representatives for preliminary peace negotiations. 3 months of coordinated resistance operations had forced the hegemony to the bargaining table, and President Santos had authorized direct diplomatic contact to explore whether the conflict could be resolved without total galactic war. The meeting had been proceeding better than expected. War Commander seemed genuinely interested in establishing coexistence agreements that would allow humanity to maintain independence while avoiding further military confrontation. The representative, diplomatic sovereign Aura, had even expressed admiration for human tactical innovations. Ambassador was saying, the hegemony recognizes that our initial assessment of human capabilities was incomplete. Perhaps arrangements can be made that serve both our interests. Sarah felt cautiously optimistic for the first time in months. War Commander, humanity appreciates the hegemony's willingness to reconsider their position. We've never sought conflict with your people. Of course not, Aura interjected, her color patterns shifting to express what the translator rendered as friendly agreement. Your species clearly values peaceful resolution over military conquest. It was at that moment that the third member of the hegemony delegation acted. The representative, who had remained silent throughout the negotiations, suddenly stood and extended one of their delicate, psychically enhanced appendages toward Sarah. The touch bypassed every security system in the room, delivering a neural shock that stopped the human ambassador's heart instantly. Sarah collapsed, her life ended in a fraction of a second by beings who had smiled at her while planning her murder. The security recording of the assassination reached Earth within hours, transmitted by automated systems aboard the neutral station. President Santos watched the footage 17 times before summoning her emergency council. The image of Sarah's lifeless body burned itself into her memory, but what haunted her most was the casualness of the act. The hegemony delegation had killed Earth's representative the way humans might swat a mosquito. "Ma'am," Admiral said quietly, "the hegemony is claiming the assassination was a rogue action by an emotionally unstable. They're offering to prosecute the individual responsible and pay reparations to Sarah's family." "Rogue action," President Santos repeated flatly. "Admiral, did you review the same footage I did?" "Yes, ma'am." The indelegates showed no surprise or distress at their companion's action. Their body language suggests the assassination was planned and approved. Director Park activated additional surveillance data. "Ma'am, we have communications intercepts from Hegemony core worlds indicating that War Commander received explicit authorization for extreme measures if negotiations failed to achieve Hegemony objectives." "The negotiations were succeeding," President Santos said, her voice carrying deadly calm. "They killed Sarah because they feared we might actually reach a peaceful settlement." Doctor, who had been reviewing data, looked up from his analysis. "Madam President, I believe the assassination serves multiple purposes. First, it eliminates Earth's most experienced diplomat. Second, it demonstrates that the hegemony considers human lives expendable. Third, and most importantly, it's designed to provoke us into emotional decision-making." "Explain." "They want us to respond with rage rather than strategy. Emotional responses are predictable, and predictable enemies are easily defeated. The assassination is psychological warfare designed to cloud our judgment." President Santos stood and walked to the memorial wall that now displayed images of every human killed in the conflict. Sarah's photograph had been added that morning, joining the hundreds of military personnel who had died defending humanity's independence. "Doctor," she said without turning around, "I understand their strategy. What I'm trying to decide is whether to give them what they expect or something they can't imagine." "Ma'am, they expect Earth to respond with massive retaliation against their territory. They're probably preparing defensive positions right now, anticipating human attacks against their military installations." President Santos turned back to face her advisors. "What if we gave them something completely different?" Admiral leaned forward. "What are you considering, Madam President?" "Admiral, how many resistance movements are currently ready for coordinated action?" 47 confirmed, with another 23 in advanced planning stages. Total forces available for simultaneous operations number approximately 800,000 personnel across 300 star systems. And Council Loyalist forces. Council Delegate Ra reports 18 species ready to openly challenge hegemony authority, with combined military forces numbering over 2 million personnel and 300 capital ships. President Santos activated the strategic display showing current political alignments across the galaxy. "Director Park, what would happen to hegemony authority if we could prove to the entire galaxy that their leadership ordered the assassination of a diplomatic envoy?" "Ma'am, murdering diplomatic representatives is considered one of the most serious violations of galactic law. If we could prove premeditation, the Galactic Council would be legally obligated to declare the hegemony a rogue state," Doctor finished. "Every member species would have justification for military action against them." "Exactly." President Santos felt the strategy crystallizing. "Admiral, I want you to coordinate with the resistance movements and Council loyalists for Operation Revelation. The goal isn't military victory, it's exposing the truth about hegemony leadership to the entire galaxy." Admiral studied the strategic implications. "Ma'am, that would require capturing hegemony command personnel alive and compelling them to testify about their orders." "Admiral, it would require capturing War Commander specifically. He received direct authorization for the assassination. If we can force him to reveal the chain of command that approved Sarah's murder, the galaxy would see the hegemony as murderous tyrants rather than legitimate protectors," Director Park concluded. "Every client species would have moral justification for rebellion." President Santos nodded. "The assassination was meant to provoke us into emotional retaliation. Instead, we're going to use it to destroy the moral authority that keeps the hegemony in power." Ma'am, Admiral said carefully, capturing a hegemony war commander alive would require a surgical operation against one of their most heavily defended installations. The risks. Admiral, the risks of conventional warfare against an empire controlling a third of the galaxy are far greater. This gives us a chance to end the conflict through political rather than military means. Doctor was reviewing data on psychology. Madam President, if we can capture, I believe I can develop interrogation techniques that will compel truthful testimony. Neurology has specific vulnerabilities to certain psychological pressures. How certain? 90% confidence that we can break his conditioning within 72 hours. President Santos made her decision. Admiral, begin planning for Operation Revelation. I want captured alive within 2 weeks. Ma'am, that's not enough time to... Admiral, President Santos interrupted, in 2 weeks, the hegemony will have fortified every major installation in their territory. If we're going to do this, we have to move before they're ready. 12 days later, Captain found herself leading the most audacious military operation in human history. The stealth frigate Shadow approached the hegemony military complex at prime, heavily defended headquarters world of the military hierarchy. Captain, her tactical officer announced, we're detecting massive defensive installations, orbital weapons platforms, patrol fleets, sensor networks. This place is designed to be impregnable. Studied the tactical displays. Commander Park, what's the status of our diversion operations? Simultaneous attacks beginning in 37 minutes across 43 different sectors. The resistance movements are hitting supply depots, communications relays, and administrative centers. Intelligence suggests hegemony forces are already scrambling to respond. Excellent, that should draw most of their mobile forces away from the core worlds. Activated the ship's communication system. All teams prepare for insertion. Remember, our objective is capture, not killing. War Commander is worth more alive than every hegemony battleship combined. The Shadow slipped through the outer defensive perimeter while Prime's garrison was receiving reports of attacks throughout their territory. A team of Special Operations personnel had trained specifically for this mission, studying every available piece of intelligence about psychology, physiology, and military protocols. Captain, the ship's pilot announced, we've located its command complex. It's heavily shielded and defended by elite guard units. Can we insert directly? Negative. We'll need to approach on foot through the maintenance tunnels beneath the complex. Nodded, she had expected as much. All teams prepare for deployment. We have a 4-hour window before the diversionary attacks end and their forces return to defensive positions. The insertion went flawlessly. Human Special Operations personnel moved through the underground passages with stealth technology that rendered them invisible to sensors. His team reached command center just as he was coordinating the hegemony response to the resistance attacks. War Commander, one of his subordinates was reporting, we're receiving attack reports from over 40 sectors simultaneously. Our forces are spread too thin to respond effectively to all targets. His response was exactly what it hoped for. Redirect all available fleet units to suppress the rebellions. These coordinated attacks suggest human involvement. Crush them quickly before they inspire additional uprisings. Activated her team's weapons and burst into the command center. War Commander, you're under arrest for violations of galactic law, specifically the murder of Ambassador Sarah. The War Commander was 3 meters of predatory muscle and military training, but his team had prepared for exactly this confrontation. Stun weapons designed specifically for physiology dropped him before he could reach his sidearm. Target secured, announced through her communicator, beginning extraction. The escape from Prime was far more difficult than the insertion. Hegemony forces had realized something was wrong and were systematically searching every ship leaving the system. His team had to fight their way through 3 security checkpoints before reaching the Shadow. But as her ship entered hyperspace with War Commander secured in the medical bay, knew they had accomplished something unprecedented. For the first time in galactic history, a human operation had successfully captured a high-ranking hegemony leader alive. The interrogation took place aboard a hidden facility in neutral space, with Doctor personally overseeing the psychological techniques designed to compel truthful testimony. Council Delegate Ra and representatives from several resistance movements, observed the proceedings to ensure their legitimacy. "War Commander," Doctor began, "you are accused of ordering the assassination of Ambassador Sarah during diplomatic negotiations. What are your instructions from Hegemony Command regarding this matter?" The officer initially attempted to maintain military discipline, claiming the assassination was an unauthorized action by an unstable. But Doctor's psychological techniques gradually broke down his conditioning, exposing the truth behind the diplomatic murder. "I received direct orders from the Hegemony Supreme Council," finally admitted, his voice displaying the emotional exhaustion that indicated truthful testimony. "The assassination was planned as soon as Earth agreed to negotiations. The Supreme Council determined that peaceful coexistence would encourage other species to demand independence." "Who specifically authorized Ambassador's murder?" "Supreme War Leader, Prime Manipulator Eth, and Consciousness Director, the three ruling members of the Hegemony Supreme Council." Doctor continued the interrogation for 17 hours, extracting detailed testimony about the Hegemony's systematic violations of galactic law over the past century. Revealed evidence of forced relocations, economic warfare against independent species, and the planned extermination of Earth's population as an example to other potential rebels. When the interrogation concluded, Council Delegate Ra stood to address the observers. "This testimony will be presented to the full Galactic Council within 48 hours. Under galactic law, the evidence compels a formal declaration that the Hegemony leadership constitutes a rogue government operating in violation of fundamental galactic principles." Watch the proceedings with grim satisfaction. Sarah's death had been transformed from a tactical setback into the Hegemony's greatest strategic mistake. The assassination that was meant to intimidate humanity had instead provided the legal justification for their complete overthrow. But as she prepared to return to Earth with news of the mission's success, knew the hardest part was just beginning. The Hegemony would not surrender power peacefully, and the galaxy was about to experience the most devastating war in its recorded history. President Santos received the news while reviewing casualty reports from the diversionary operations. The resistance movements had succeeded beyond all expectations, but the cost had been significant. Over 40,000 rebels had died in the coordinated attacks that made capture possible. "Ma'am," Admiral announced, "Operation Revelation is complete. We have Hegemony Supreme Council testimony admitting to Ambassador's planned assassination and detailing systematic violations of galactic law. Casualties from the diversionary operations: 43,000 killed, approximately 60,000 wounded. However, the resistance movements captured or destroyed over 200 Hegemony installations and liberated 17 colonial worlds." President Santos studied the casualty figures. Every number represented a being who had died fighting for the principle that no species should be forced to accept subjugation. "Admiral, are the resistance movements still capable of coordinated action?" "Yes, ma'am. Morale is extremely high despite the losses. Word is already spreading about capture and confession. Several Hegemony client species are openly declaring independence. And Council loyalist forces ready to emerge from hiding as soon as the Galactic Council issues a formal declaration. Ra expects the vote to be unanimous. No legitimate government can support the Hegemony after hearing's testimony." President Santos felt the weight of history pressing down on her. In the coming days, her decisions would determine whether the galaxy moved toward democratic self-governance or descended into centuries of totalitarian darkness. "Admiral," she said finally, "signal all human forces and resistance movements. When the Council declaration is issued, we begin the final phase. Operation Liberation will either free the galaxy from tyranny or die trying." "Ma'am, are you ordering total war against the Hegemony?" "Admiral, they ordered total war against us the moment they planned Ambassador's assassination. The only difference is that now the entire galaxy will know who the real aggressors are." The Galactic Council's emergency session began with unprecedented security measures. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Chamber, while military vessels from 18 different civilizations provided protection against potential Hegemony retaliation. The evidence that would be presented today would either legitimize the greatest rebellion in galactic history or condemn it as terrorist action by dangerous extremists. Council President called the assembly to order with tones that resonated through the chamber like funeral bells. Honored delegates, we convene to consider evidence of systematic violations of galactic law by the tripartite hegemony. The testimony we will hear today was extracted under certified psychological analysis from War Commander of the military hierarchy. The first portion of his confession dealt with the assassination of Ambassador Sarah. His voice, played through high-quality recording systems, filled the chamber with clinical precision as he detailed the premeditation behind the diplomatic murder. The Supreme Council determined that allowing humans to achieve peaceful independence would encourage similar demands from other client species. The assassination was specifically designed to appear as an emotional outburst while actually representing calculated policy. Murmurs of outrage rippled through the assembly. Even delegates from species with authoritarian governments recognized that murdering diplomatic envoys violated fundamental principles of interstellar law. But the real shock came with subsequent testimony about hegemony expansion policies. For over an hour, the captured war commander detailed systematic violations dating back centuries: forced population transfers, economic warfare against independent worlds, the deliberate creation of crises to justify intervention, and the planned extermination of species that refused subordination.